Hailing frequencies open and welcome aboard Treks and Tangents. I'm your co-host Brian.
And I'm your co-host Jaci. I'm the Star Trek newbie who treks off on tangents.
And I'm your Star Trek expert who is here to get the tangents back on track. Each episode we watch and talk about a different Star Trek episode. And this week we watched
Star Trek, the original series, Season 1, Episode 17, The Squire of Gothos.
Thank you all for joining us for another episode, and we'll just jump right into it this week.
Oh. Just wait. We have to remind everybody that Valentine's Day is coming up.
That's right. If you're listening to this live when it comes out, you've got
3 days.
3 days, 4 days. So don't forget Valentine's Day. Don't forget to get something special for your partner, your loved ones.
Or for yourself.
Or just go buy some candy for yourself.
It's on sale at CVS.
The real sale for Valentine's Day at CVS starts February 15th, the day after Valentine's Day.
Oh, that is true too.
Just like Halloween candy. So, yep, go get chocolate.
Yum.
But we'll start this episode off as we always do by revisiting last week's Turbo Lift tease. That's where we gave Jaci the title of this week's episode. And Jaci, with no other information, tried to guess or predict the plot of this week's episode. So let's revisit that. Computer, what was Jaci's prediction last week?
Jaci's prediction last week was, I imagine this person to be very full of himself and is the town crier of Gothos, the rumor mill.
So Jaci, how accurate do you think your prediction was?
Well, it was kind of correct, but a lot of off course.
So, Gothos isn't even a town.
It's nothing. It's make-believe.
It's an inhabitant of one.
That a child made.
So I don't know that he would be the rumor mill of much of anything.
Of his own echo chamber.
Pretty much. I'm gonna say this one doesn't hit the mark this week.
Well, if it's a population of one, I won. 2 ones.
Okay. Well, why don't you tell us how you really feel? What were your initial impressions of this week's episode?
I really wanted to love it, but I kind of hated it because it's so degrading to my ladies and just one small peep into a world and someone completely believes that is what their life is. And I mean, to call someone a prize as a piece of, like a physical piece, not like you're a prize of a woman, you're my friend, like an actual piece of equipment. That was, nah.
So on the opposite end of the spectrum, I really enjoy this episode. I find it very entertaining. I pull back the curtain a little bit. We try not to discuss the episode before we go into recording. Jaci and I talked about this episode a little bit.
Yeah, you cheated.
I didn't really cheat. We talked about it a little bit behind the scenes. So I knew going into this recording that this is not your favorite episode.
Yeah, because you cheated.
Didn't cheat. I just happen to also know more about Star Trek than you do.
That's true.
I really like this episode because of course, of the main character, Trelane.
Yes, he was very entertaining.
He is very entertaining. And watching this for the first time, again, I came into Star Trek in the Next Generation era, watched most of the Next Generation before ever revisiting the original series. So you watch this episode from that perspective, and the mannerisms of the character, as well as, of course, him having all of these fantastical powers, you can't help but think and be reminded of members of the Q continuum. This is all going to go over Jaci's head, but you have to think about the fact that this has to be a member of the Q, which we won't spoiler. He is, in fact, a member of the Q. It is retconned and added into canon later because, of course, of the filming of this episode. The Q and the Q continuum were not envisioned or invented by the writers of Star Trek. So this is one of those things that gets changed and more context added. And I really enjoy when Star Trek does that, when it goes back and adds more context to past episodes and past content to further tie it together, rather than when Star Trek has to go back and change things to force them to be more in line with the overall universe of Star Trek.
So there's a character named Q, and there's also a group called Q?
Yes, there
Oh,
is.
Lord.
There is a group of aliens called Q. They live in the Q continuum. And in the Next Generation, there is a character named Q, or is referred to as Q. They are extremely complicated. For the purposes of this episode, it's just something that I keep in mind when I rewatch this episode, that in fact this is a member of the Q continuum. It makes everything make so much more sense.
I'll trust you on that.
But also for more
Depth.
or context for this episode, the primary point to consider is at the end, regardless of him being Q, belonging to this other overall arcing story, he's a kid. He's a child.
Yes.
That's the big reveal at the end. Spoiler if you haven't seen the episode.
And that explains his wonky hairdo, too.
Yes. So I like the episode because it's entertaining, and for the added context of the fact that this is a member of the Q and how it ties into all of the rest of my viewing experience with Star Trek. And Jackie doesn't care for the episode as much.
Well, I mean, I agree. Yes, it was entertaining. But then when I watched it for like the 4th time, I was like, wait, what did he just say? And wait, what's that in the corner? So yeah, it just took me a while to get there.
Yeah. Well, without any other further delay, let's get to the episode. Jackie, why don't you walk us through this week's episode?
Alrighty. So we are opening on the Enterprise bridge, and the blonde yeoman, we'll learn her name later. I already forgot it, but they do tell us.
So you say that, and then I have to think about what their name is as I frantically pull up all of the reference notes that we have.
Well, he'll introduce her to us at the very end.
Again, Star Trek does not do well in introducing characters as they come up.
Teresa Ross.
That's it. Yeoman Teresa Ross.
So she is handing out drinks, like always, like a hostess, like last time, which is annoying. Does that continue on? I hope not.
Well, yeah.
Oh,
Yeomans generally are responsible for making sure that the crew members are hydrated, so that they don't have to leave their stations and leave their duties, because that all needs to be attended to at all times. I also don't think this is the same yeoman as last week's episode, like you're thinking of. I think this is a different actress.
Oh my gosh, so many. That's why they didn't name her to the last part.
It very well could be.
All right, let me get back on track. The Enterprise is on its way to Beta Colony 6, and they're delivering supplies to that colony, but they have to first cross this void, and McCoy calls it a star desert. And then we are opening up to the episode fully as McCoy and Kirk remember and fantasize over oasis in the desert on Earth through a mirage. And Spock goes, the definition of void is barren wasteland. And they're like, you would never get what a mirage is because your brain's too straight.
Right.
They're just ribbing him.
Kirk and McCoy have a very romanticized image of deserts, and
well, yeah, it's romanticized on TV.
It is, and Spock has a very much more logical point of view of there's nothing romantic about a place completely void of life.
And we also learn that we're 900 light years away from Earth at that point.
Yes, that's going to be partially important to the plot of the episode.
So after they get done teasing him, Spock goes back to check on where they are located, because they are in this void and there's no street signs or anything in space. So he wants to make sure that they get to the colony on time in 8 days, and he's just checking on it. So then while he's checking on it, though, there's a weird reading, jumped in front of them, and Spock inquires, like, haven't you seen Navigator? Why didn't you notice this before? And the poor guy is Navigator to Sal. He's like, oh my gosh, I swear I didn't see it yet. Like, it just popped up.
Yeah. And we find out later, again, my headcanon, we find out later that Trelane can move the planet as needed.
Insane.
So I'm imagining that the Enterprise does not happen to be in the path and come across the planet. I'm imagining Trelane becomes aware of the Enterprise and moves the planet to be in the path. So some defense to the Navigator.
Well, when as farther I got into the episode, that's what I also thought happened. Or the 16 previous episodes, I presume something crazy happened, because why would your Navigator not notice this giant thing in front of them?
Sure.
You know? And so Sulu is then told by Kirk to change course. They want to go 40 degrees out of range. All of this geometry and whatnot is wild, but is also important because they also add ship things like boats and stuff. So, wow, craziness. All right. So they want to get out of range of that giant, well, we'll call it a planet because they don't know what it is yet, but it is a planet.
It is a planet.
It's Gothos.
They want to get out of range of it because it's also reported by Uhura that they don't have time to stop to investigate. They want to get the supplies to the colony. I referenced that last week when we pointed out how stupid it was for Kirk to send out the shuttle with the Galileo 7 to investigate that quasar when they were running supplies to another colony, and they could have just reported it and had someone come investigate it later, because that's exactly what Kirk wants to do in this instance.
He learned his lesson.
Sure, let's introduce that headcanon. But he can't because the planet is blocking their communications, so they can't communicate out the discovery to market to have someone come back and investigate later. So they want to get out of range.
So Sulu goes to input that new information in order to get away from it, and suddenly he disappears. And
in a blink.
Yeah, like poof.
Not transported away, but just snap your fingers, he's gone.
Like I Dream a Genie one.
That's a perfect analogy.
Oh, yeah. Boing. Oh, sorry. So then
sound effects by Jaci.
So Kirk runs over because like, whoa, where'd Sulu go? And he too, I Dream a Genie like disappears.
Yes. Crosses his arms, squints his eyes, nods, and is gone.
Exactly.
And then he reappears next scene wearing the exact same outfit from I Dream of Genie.
Oh my. No, actually, the cell yells at Spock and says, they're gone. And then Spock, without even checking in, goes, emergency, reverse power.
Yes, I guess to bring the ship to a stop, which is an odd command to give instead of, well, whatever. Well, it's dramatic. It's the moment leading to the opening credits.
Yes. So I would think that was the thing that he could think of at the time, because it would automatically make the ship at least stop going forward and then back up in case they're going into some weird thing where everyone just keeps getting poofed. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. He's saving everybody. So he is now the commanding officer, and Spock, and he's now doing all of the log entries as first officer in place of Kirk.
Sure, and we've seen this before in other episodes.
We also learn that the crew has been looking for Kirk and Sulu on the Enterprise for 4 hours. And finally, they have agreed that they're not on the ship, and the ship is now on red alert. After those 4 hours, Spock goes back to double check the sensor readings and make sure that Uhura has been trying to contact the planet all this time. Yes, but no one's getting back to her. So, quote unquote, everything is normal, but Kirk and Sulu are missing. DeSalle really just wants to go straight to the planet to start looking for them, because if they're not on the Enterprise, then that's obviously where they are. McCoy jumps on that and says, yes, why haven't we done it? And I mean, Scotty's like, yeah, let's go. But Spock tells them to slow down, that it's his decision, and he will make it. But, first of all, Scotty, you and I, we can't go because we're, important to the ship continuing on if anything bad were to happen. Spock asks the geologist officer, Jaeger, thank you, to describe the planet. Like, how is it for two humans that don't have protection? How is it? And Jaeger goes on to explain how they would probably be dead because the planet is barren. It has deadly atmosphere. It cannot hold life. There's nothing growing, no animals, no plants, nothing.
And a toxic atmosphere.
That's the word. So as they're discussing this, a card-like image comes above Uhura's sensors, and it says greetings and felicitations in Old English font. That's important also.
It is, yes. It's certainly harder to read as Comic Sans, as I'm for those who wonder, we have our notes pulled up, and Jaci chooses to write everything out using Comic Sans.
It's fun.
I called her a psycho before we started recording.
But Comic Sans is fun, and good thing I have the closed captioning, or else I wouldn't have been able to read the Old English font either.
It's true.
So Spock has Uhura reply to that image, identify yourself. And the only reply comes back as hip-hip-horrah. And then at the end, Tallyho. And Desal questions like, is this a joke?
They all seem to surmise, well, they don't even surmise, they don't talk about it. They all just start referring to this as a transmission from the planet's surface, in contrast to the readings that we were just told that it's incapable of supporting life. A little interesting that they all jump to that conclusion. I understand that this is a barren part of space and there's nothing else around, but they don't even entertain the idea of it coming from a ship. They don't entertain the idea of any other source for this. They don't question it. They just instantly assume and say that it comes from the planet, which is true, but just odd.
And that also makes McCoy, state that very obvious that there has to be life on the planet somewhere. So Spock calls for the transporter room to be prepared and stocked with everything that the landing party needs to be able to live on the planet. Basically, all they have is oxygen tank. That's all they have, like visibly on them as they beam down to the planet. So the three beam onto the planet, and it's beautiful. Trees, green, nice air, everything. And McCoy asked Jaeger, where is all this nasty atmosphere that you were talking about? But Jaeger has the readings and he says nothing's changed, so he doesn't know what happened.
Right. So the tricorders is still detecting all of this toxic atmosphere and not picking up on any of this beauty, vegetative life, or breathable atmosphere. And the communications are still down. They can't reach the Enterprise on the comms. The little beacon that they have that tries to act as an emergency notice that they need to be beamed out isn't working. They are now cut off from the ship.
But luckily, Desal finds a building and says, follow me. And they walk up to this stone. It's magnificent, like a castle almost.
Yes, a very old Gothic-looking castle. Very much gave off the vibes of the arrival of Brad Majors and Janet Weiss to Frankenfurter's castle from Rocky Horror, except it's not raining.
So you just walk into the building.
No riffraff to greet them.
No, but if you notice in the corner, we have the first alien we ever met, the little salt monster. Well, the big one.
Yes, the salt vampire.
Yes, but I only noticed that the second time I watched it.
So. Yes, it stands out a little bit because everything in the castle is decorated in this Gothic earlier time period.
Like medieval times.
Yes, and it certainly fits the vibe because it's very much stuffed trophy is the vibe it's giving off, but it of course is not from Earth, so. And there is a funny little moment where they run into it. It is McCoy who is interacting with it, or at least seeing it. He has a reaction to it, but doesn't It's a nonverbal reaction, so it doesn't really give us the full vibe. Does McCoy recognize it? Does he have any feelings? Because again, that whole episode was centric on McCoy and his interaction with his past lover, who had been impersonated by this monster. Funny little Easter egg throwback.
I think it was great that they threw that in there. The other two are walking around what looks like a giant museum, I mean, to be frank. And
that would be a fair assessment because Trelane is recreating this, and I think it would be appropriate to describe his thought process in creating this environment is a museum. It is his tribute to this time period.
Exactly. As if he was looking through a telescope at 900 years ago.
Yes, which they blatantly call out later.
And across the room, they see what looks like a waxwork of Sulu and Kirk on display.
I think they recognize that it is Kirk and Sulu. The reference to the wax figure is more of just a way to describe their current state. I don't think at any point they assume that it's not Kirk and Sulu.
Oh, totally agreed. No, they're just like stuck in position posing. And then that main door slams shut and a gentleman is beautifully dressed playing the harpsichord, and then the two, Sulu and Kirk, pop alive and we are introduced to Trelane.
General Trelane, retired.
Oh yes, of Gothos. The Squire of Gothos.
As he refers to himself in the more informal.
But make sure he has the title.
Again, because without jumping all the way to the end again where it's revealed his true character, he not only wants to, but he has a feeling of superiority over the away team from the Enterprise.
Oh, extremely. I mean, he even calls Earth his little hobby, like watching it and everything, because he talks about pieces of history like Napoleon and World War II and the love for uniforms. And then he even talks about his superiority again when he takes the phaser from DeSalle and is like, oh, look, this is on, this is off.
Right. And so he explains his motivation to kidnapping Kirk and Sulu, getting the away team to beam down, as I've been observing your planet for a long period of time, and I happen to encounter people from this planet, so I couldn't miss the opportunity. He has these extraordinary powers. To go off on a slight tangent back to the fact that he is a member of Q, he's almost omnipotent, not quite, but almost. He has the ability, we assume, to harness all of the powers of the Q. Is he really observing Earth from a distance, and this truly is a hobby? Or did he happen to just encounter a ship full of mostly humans, and he uses that as an excuse to pull them down, when in fact it's just, I happened to randomly encounter you, I digested your history and your culture, and I instantly came up with this story about observing your planet. Again, the Q continuum doesn't exist in Star Trek yet. It hasn't been invented. The purpose of the writers would have been, I've been observing Earth for this period of time, but it just makes you wonder his motivation and his true motivation and how much is retconned in future Star Trek series.
So he's like an alien chat GTP?
Sure, that would be a good way to describe it. Someone who has a lot of knowledge and a lot of power at his disposal.
And he basically talks about being able to change that energy into matter and back again, and it's just such hard work.
Right. Again, very much striking of the power at his fingertips. But as we previously mentioned, this is the part of the episode where they being the away team, come to the conclusion that if Trelane has been observing the Earth for a period of time, they are 900 light years away from Earth, which means because light has its own time that it takes to travel, what he would be observing of Earth would be 900 years in the past, which explains the motif, and he wouldn't have any knowledge of Earth outside of this snapshot. Again, depending on how long he's been observing it, he might have been able to observe things further in the past, but certainly nothing more modern. It also partially explains why he has such a opinionated view of Earth and humans. Very warlike, very combative, very violent, very conquest driven, because that would have been Earth and humans 900 years ago. So there's that constant back and forth where they have to explain to him, we're not like that anymore. And he doesn't seem to understand, A, that they are in fact different, but B, he expresses that he doesn't understand that he is observing Earth from 900 years in the past. He doesn't seem to understand that time dilation of viewing light that has traveled 900 years. Is he faking it, or does he truly not have that knowledge? I don't know. But in this conversation, and Kirk questioning Trelane and asking questions and demanding answers about Trelane's motivation, Trelane only reveals that he wants to play host and have the crew of the Enterprise as his guests so that they can talk and converse and learn about each other. But it's very obvious that Trelane's motivation is not a two-way street of exchange of knowledge and ideas. It's merely Trelane wants to interrogate the Enterprise and get more information about Earth.
Or even show off how much better he is overall.
Right. In and amongst everything else in the conversation, there is definitely a motivation for Trelane to show off.
So as Trelane and Kirk are having this conversation, DeSalle, who is already told by Kirk to keep his phaser on stun, we're not killing anybody, we're just communicating here. DeSalle has been making his way over to Trelane to try and stun him so that, they have more time to see what's up. But Trelane notices this, and his own version of stun freezes DeSalle and takes his phaser. And he's like, oh, look at this delightful Trelane. Trelane takes the phaser and looks it over. How do I use this? Oh, these little mechanisms. This is for kill, this is for stun. And he even blows up one of his own artifacts.
He changes the phaser to kill from stun.
Oh, yes.
And then he uses the phaser to fire on first the stuffed mannequin trophy of the salt vampire.
Oh, I didn't see that.
Yeah, it was that piece. He then disintegrates a second mannequin, and it's a bird-like creature that we haven't seen up until now.
I did see that one. Oh, I missed. Oh. So Kirk is super upset that just happened, that scenario. And he's like, we're done. I want to go.
Yes, he confronts Trelane. He, in fact, walks up to Trelane and, without any resistance from Trelane, takes the phaser back, disarming Trelane. Trelane offers no resistance to this, kind of, again, setting up his character as, your weapon is inconsequential to me. It doesn't affect me. I don't need it to exert power over you, obviously. I found that an interesting note when I saw him disarmed.
Well, humans are violent little buggers. They need to have their weapons, obviously.
Yes.
So, and Trelane's like, well, you don't want to get on my bad side because this is what you will experience. And poof, Kirk is now outside experiencing the actual atmosphere that Yeager was describing originally.
Yes, a barren planet with smoke, toxic smoke, coughing, not able to survive long.
And back inside he comes. They're like, you want to play nice now?
Yes, Trelane saying, without my powers and without my intervention of creating this little bubble,
Oasis. Oh.
Oasis, you would be dead.
And then we have a commercial break.
Yes. It's almost like Trelane is trying to provide a different narrative. Kirk is accusing Trelane of keeping them prisoner. That certainly, I would think, everyone would agree, Kirk assumes that they're prisoners.
Yes.
And it's almost like Trelane's choosing of his words of, without my help, without my intervention, without my powers to create this bubble, you'd be dead, as a way to justify the kidnapping of the crew by saying, you guys aren't prisoners, I'm helping you.
But I took you first.
I did put you in this situation. You wouldn't need my help. if it wasn't for me. But I don't know. It's kind of a way into seeing Trelane's thought process of I don't think he's trying to convince Kirk as a lie. I think Trelane really does in his mind think, I'm the only thing keeping you guys alive. I'm helping you. I think that truly is what he believes himself. Because again, he's a kid.
I didn't know that yet.
No, but I'm looking at it from hindsight all the way through the episode.
Well, it's very real as I'm watching it.
Right.
When we come back from the break, we then hear more from Spock saying that the Enterprise has orbited the planet of Gothos 14 times and they still haven't been able to get a hold of anybody. The landing party, Kirk, Sulu, no communication is able to be sent or received, but because they've been able to divert impulse power to the sensors, which I don't understand really.
They're transferring battery energy from one system to another. They're putting more power into the sensors to give them more energy to perform.
Okay, impulse equals battery.
Impulse is a system for the engines.
Okay.
So there's many different types of engine systems. There's impulse, there's manual navigation jets if a ship were to land on the surface, if they could land on the surface. There's warp drive. Impulse power is basically
Like another backup.
it's another speed, it's another operation of the engines. They're not currently using their impulse engines very much because they're just maintaining orbit around the planet. So they're able to take energy from that system and put it into the sensors.
Okay.
This has been Starfleet Engineering 101 by Brian.
So because they did that, they were able to detect on the planet a small area that is stable. It doesn't change at all. It's just there.
Yes, stable in the sense that the atmosphere to the planet is not only toxic, but turbulent. There's lots of storms, so wind, pressure. So a stable condition, kind of like a little pocket or an eye of the storm.
But Spock still tells Scotty to keep fine-tuning so that if life is found, they can beam them up immediately.
Yep.
So we pop back onto the planet, and Trelane is still yapping. He is enjoying his many flags and banners from the not so many battles he knows about, but he's proud of them, and the medals, of course, that he wears on his jacket. And he's playing the harpsichord again.
Yes, he
Loves that harpsichord.
He loves the harpsichord. We'll talk about the harpsichord in a bit. He's showing off his decorations. He's showing off all of his items in this museum of his. Again, he's allowing his desire to be show-offish and brag because he wants to make himself seem important. Again, his ego is causing him to show off and brag in front of the crew members of the Enterprise. He's trying to make himself feel important.
But that you would seem would turn people away, that they don't want to have a conversation with you if you're just going to brag about things.
Sure, but he's also a kid, so imagine a small child who has memorized every fact about Pokemon. And all he wants to do is converse about Pokemon, and he wants to show off his knowledge about Pokemon, but his only audience are adults who don't give a damn about Pokemon. That's Trelane at this moment, talking about Earth history from 900 years ago. And oftentimes, his knowledge isn't correct.
But he can keep talking because that gives McCoy time to scan him to see if he's dead or alive, and he doesn't exist.
Yeah, no readings whatsoever. Echoing again past scans of the surrounding area, the castle, the room, even Kirk and Sulu when they were frozen, when they were first found by McCoy, they didn't have any readings either.
And Yeager also mentions that there's a fire, but it's not hot.
Fire in a fireplace.
Oh, yes, I missed that.
Yes, the room does not spontaneously catch fire. It is a fire in a traditional fireplace. But right, it looks correct, but it's giving off zero heat.
So Kirk puts all of that together, the time period being off, the lack of heat from the fireplace. So while Trelane must be knowledgeable, there also has to be something that, Kirk brings all of those facts together, the no heat in the fireplace, him not having a scan. Trelane obviously knows a lot, but he's missing something.
Yes, he's missing the things that he wouldn't be able to observe through a telescope looking at Earth. He knows what a fire looks like, but he doesn't know that it produces heat. He knows what humans look like, but he doesn't know what their vital stats would be. He doesn't know that humans would have to project a heartbeat.
So Kirk tries to, talk to him some more and say, well, we need to go. I mean, we could talk later, but I have 400 men and women that are waiting for me. And then Trelane's like, you have women on board?
You got girls?
And he's like, well, we'll just bring them down here. They can play with us.
Yeah, we'll get the party going down here.
And then Kirk says, no, we're not doing that. And just as he's talking, they're interrupted by the transport signal from Enterprise. And it's also Spock. And he's like, yes, thanks, Spock. And then Trelane, who's Spock? Like, invite him over. But then they're immediately beamed back onto the Enterprise.
Right. I have in my notes here is a moment as Kirk tells Trelane no, and Trelane gets angry with Kirk. It almost is like, for half a moment, it seems like the accent slips from Trelane, and I don't know if that was intentional or if I was reading too much into it, but it would be interesting if it was intentional and he has an accent and the accent slips or is dropped when he gets angry. I think that would add depth to the character that he's putting on this charade. Anyway, my little tangent.
We're back on the Enterprise, and everyone's supposed to go back to their stations. And they're all like, how did we get back up here? How'd you find us? And Spock explains that he just beamed all life forms up onto the ship from a certain area since they were unable to clearly communicate with the planet. So hopefully they brought up the right people. And McCoy is super excited because he's like, yes, Trelane isn't a person or a life form, so he shouldn't be here. And so Kirk then says, all right, let's warp away at maximum speed.
Yeah, there's a funny moment where one of the yeomen I think it's Yeoman Teresa, is concerned about Captain Kirk, and he just ignores her. He doesn't respond to her at all.
And then we have another commercial. So when we're coming back from the commercial, it was like super fast because they're still running away. And Kirk has Scotty get the engine ready so they can get 100 million miles away from Trelane.
Yes.
A madman. And they're like, who's a madman? And then Uhura asks McCoy what happened on the planet. And he tries to start saying a mutant, but he's like, never mind. And so Uhura doesn't know. And then as they're discussing and trying to get away, Trelane appears on the bridge.
Yep.
I thought he wasn't a life form.
No, but he has powers. So he has the ability to put himself wherever he wants.
Yeah, I think they figured that out because he is again in all the same clothing. He just appears on the ship and he is incredulous, wanting to know who Spock is.
Right. He points out to Captain Kirk that he's not mad at Kirk or the away team for leaving. His anger is purely focused on Spock for taking the away team away from him.
And Spock introduces himself. And of course, Trelane, not knowing what Spock is, he's like, doesn't look to be all human. And then Spock goes on about his lineage.
his family history of being half Vulcan, half human.
And that he is very proud of his Vulcan side. And they're not predatory, but exceptions can be made.
Yes.
Because of this standing up for himself, Trelane assumes that Kirk will punish Spock for standing up. And Kirk says, no, I would rather commend his actions because, you're being wrong. And then Trelane waves his hand like a magic wand and they're back at his house on the planet.
Yes, Trelane gets what he wants. He puts the away team, Spock, and now Yeoman and Uhura as well because he's seen them on the bridge. He pretty much pulls the whole bridge crew down to the planet.
To like have a feast.
Yes. Also, I noted in this moment, because it is a hard cut. There is no special effects. There is no sound effect.
It's the genie effect.
It is just a camera angle change to show that they are now back down on the planet in his museum, and we now have a table setting for a feast, as mentioned, but no one seems surprised. None of the actors in between those two shots show any shock whatsoever. They don't react to the change because they had to have seen the exact same thing we saw as the viewers. They blinked and now they're completely in a new spot. Maybe not as unsettling for Sulu and Kirk, who have already gone through this, but for everyone else, especially maybe Uhura and the Yeoman, this might be a shock that they should react to, but we get nothing.
Maybe that's part of the genie effect. They have like a calming benzo dose.
Okay. New theories here on our podcast.
So they're at their feast, and again, the cell tries to run at Trelane while he's talking. And again, he's frozen in time. And Trelane's like, "Aw, there's that primitive without emotion."
Yes. Again, DeCell is very much feeding into Trelane's stereotypical description of humans as being aggressive and motivated by that aggressive emotion.
So he pushes them to sit down, eat, and drink. And as he's telling them to eat and drink, the men follow suit. But then he notices Yeoman and Yahara and gets mad at Kirk for not introducing them.
Right. And again, when Trelane is telling everyone to sit down and eat and enjoy the food, and even when he pivots to talking to Kirk about not introducing him to the women, this all very much comes across as Trelane is playing make-believe. And he doesn't really force them to sit down. He just kind of tells them to do it, and he expects them to do it. Again, this is a child talking to his toys. There is no expectation that the toys will not do what he says.
So Kirk introduces the yeoman, Teresa Ross, and then he introduces Yahora with all of her titles, emphasizing that she's a decorated crew member. And Trelane simply minimizes her to a prize, pointing out her beautiful skin color and eyes like Cleopatra.
Yes, specifically referring to her as a Nubian prize.
Spock stands and is again introduced, and Trelane makes it known that he didn't have to bring Spock. Spock understands and continues on with his objection to even being there, and that he has to deal with this craziness. And Trelane says it's okay, that human side of you is just your only saving grace, and calls him ill-mannered. Then Trelane goes back to Yeoman Ross and is like, "We're going to dance." So he has Yahura sit at the harpsichord, and when she says, "I can't play this," he magically makes it that she can, and she starts playing a beautiful song.
Right. And we'll take a second to talk about this because it's an interesting thought. He provides, so what is Trelane actually do? Does he give the knowledge to Uhura to play the harpsichord, and Uhura starts to play the harpsichord? Because throughout this entire encounter and the rest of the scene, Uhura is going along with everything and she's playing the harpsichord. She's smiling. She's obviously enjoying the experience. So what is it? Is Uhura choosing to act that way and play the harpsichord using this power that he's given? Or is Trelane forcing Uhura to do this? I tend to believe that despite how that makes Uhura look, she is enjoying this new knowledge and she is playing the harpsichord and choosing to do it on her own. Because there's no other examples in this episode where Trelane has the ability to mind control people into doing things that they don't particularly want to do. So this has to be a decision that Uhura is making to play the harpsichord and to kind of lean into this fantasy a little bit in marvel of the idea that she now has this new knowledge of a new musical instrument as a musician, as we've seen her in the past.
And I was just going to say, as a musician myself, I would be kind of grateful to be able to know how to play an instrument that I didn't know how.
Yeah, but it does give a little bit of a negative tint to her character because throughout the rest of the scene, he makes the yeoman change out of her uniform into a gown, um, basically turning her into a doll that he's dressing up. There's other things in the scene that maybe should have called Uhura's attention away from her newfound talents and her new glory, but again, she's just so focused and ignoring everything else. I view it as a character flaw for Uhura. Not bad, just an interesting point to her character.
And also make note that Trelane and Teresa are dancing in between the harpsichord and a mirror on the wall.
Yes, a lot of the action that takes place in the episode takes place in this small area up to this point. The harpsichord is by the mirror. That's where Trelane first appeared to the crew. That's where he chooses to stand most of the time.
So the dashing warrior and his elegant lady, as Trelane calls them, are dancing. Uhura is playing, and McCoy, Spock, and Kirk are by the heatless fireplace and commenting on the poor taste of food and drink.
Yes,
And-
for some reason, McCoy decided he was just going to start chowing down on the food.
Well, he wanted to drink the brandy, obviously.
Pretty much.
Yeah. But Spock's like, well, that makes complete sense. He can obviously recreate everything, but he is not knowledgeable of the depth. He can create the surface, but knows nothing about taste, temperature, texture.
Again, things that he wouldn't be able to learn by looking through a telescope at Earth. He would simply know what the food and the brandy would look like.
And then they notice that he's never moving away from the mirror. Is it because he likes to see his own reflection, his ego, or something else?
As Spock suggests, it could be the source of all of his powers. It could be not a mirror. It could be a machine that's allowing him to do all these fantastical things.
And he'd need to be near it so that everything could be controlled properly. And Kirk then interrupts the dancing because he wants to prove if that's actually what's happening, this machine. And he calls out to Trelane, pulling Yeoman Ross from him, acting all jealous. What are you wearing? Don't take gifts from this man. You're mine, blah, blah, blah. And so Trelane's like, oh, see, I told you. You're claiming women as you go. You're jealous. I was right all along.
Yep, and Trelane is not angry at Kirk's outburst at all.
He's happy.
He's happy, he's amused, he's enjoying getting to observe this.
And then Kirk punches him because, they're fighting over Teresa. And so this is when Trelane's like, yes, well, let's play some more. And let's play some games. And then they end up doing the craziest one yet, the duel.
Yeah.
Hamilton, hello.
Yeah, Trelane views Kirk's punch to his face as a duel. Again, his knowledge of humans taking place 900 years in the past. That's what he would expect when one man punches or slaps another man. It's a challenge to a duel, which Kirk leans into.
So Trelane happens to have a replica of the exact pistols used at the Hamilton duel where Hamilton was killed. And he's like, here you go, choose your gun, and I'll have mine. And they're opposite of each other in this museum. But Trelane says, I get to go first.
He does. At this point, watching Kirk take his position, everyone's set up for this duel. Was it obvious to you, Jaci, that he planned to shoot the mirror?
Yes, I that's what I was assuming, that we were going to shoot the mirror or at least break it somehow to see if that machine was back there, a la Wizard of Oz.
Yeah. I think it was a very obvious setup. I think they definitely held the viewer's hand leading up to this. Kind of an amusing side anecdote when Trelane claims the first shot and he points the gun up in the air and fires the gun up into the air, wasting his shot. Again, extremely egotistical.
Yeah, because he says he never misses.
And I don't think at this point he's really trying to show off for the Enterprise crew. I think this is more of him just playing the role, and he's playing imagination is what he's doing. So he's putting on a show for himself. But yes, makes it very obvious that the pistol's not going to harm him. He has all faith that he's going to come across this as unscathed. So he stretches out his hands. Kirk lines up his shot, and then at the last second diverts his aim and shoots the pistol and blows out this giant mirror in question.
And then, like the child we learn he starts pouting and having a tantrum that Kirk ruined everything. And he tells them to go back to the ship, but they're all dead men. Thankfully, that broken mirror breaks up all the interference for the communication to Enterprise, and they're able to beam up to the Enterprise after Trelane disappears back into that mirror that we just broke.
Yes, and an important note to that because, again, Kirk seemed to be writing and betting on this theory that breaking the mirror would rob Trelane of all of his powers. It certainly interferes with things, but the fact that he can just walk toward the wall and instantly disappear, we get the reaction from Kirk that shows that wasn't the source of all of his powers. He has other things going on. You should continue to be worried.
So we have a commercial after all that action, and then we're back on the bridge where we are going back to Beta Colony 6. Full power. Let's go, Scotty. Sulu, let's emergency warp as soon as possible. Of course, these are all from Kirk's direction. And Uhura asks, should I make my report to Starfleet Command? like you just got out of all this craziness. Take a break, lady. But Kirk tells her, wait on it. We don't want him to track us.
Yeah, I think it's a matter of he doesn't want. Kirk has the fear that if they send that message within range of the planet, Trelane will be able to trace the trajectory of the message and gain knowledge of where Starfleet is. But he knows where Earth is because he's been observing it. So it's a weird tangent sidetrack that goes nowhere.
And even when out of range, like Spock asks, what does that mean? And Kirk's like, we just have to do an educated guess. Do it from point that we entered the solar system of that planet.
Right.
And then this really awful part, I hate it. Yeoman Ross is still in her pink dress as she saunters up to Kirk and to take his clipboard. And she's like, do you think I can change? Ugh. And he's like, yes, the ball is over. Turn in your glass slippers, blah, blah, blah. I'm not a fan of that part. So she takes the clipboard and she turns around and goes. But yeah, I don't like that part at all.
Yeah, you mentioned that in our off recording conversation preparing for the episode, that if I understood you correctly, you didn't like how that portrays the yeoman.
Yeah, she already looks like she's a child. Then they have her dressed up like this, and she's not Cinderella.
Jaci is also extremely biased and thinks that Yeoman Rand is the only one. Yeah, that's
my bestie.
Those who are listening, that is where Jackie's bias and opinion is coming from. It's formed from
girl power,
an attachment to the character of Yeoman Rand. So
I miss her.
I understand that. So, well, we got to get through the rest of these episodes so that we can do a bonus episode on the motion picture where Rand comes back.
Okay. But I mean, this part was really bad, I think, because they could have had her change out on the way, in that space conundrum.
Sure.
But Sulu then announces that they're about to warp, and then there's another large body of mass in their way. They can't go anywhere. So this is where all those boat terms come in, and I have no idea what they're saying, but all the actors do a great job at leaning far to the right and far to the left as they're getting out of the way of that blob.
All in unison, all to indicate that they're making sharp, evasive maneuvers, because we get this prolonged scene where the planet Gothos ends up back in their path. They move away from it, and then it suddenly appears in front of them again. So they start trying to maneuver around it. Everywhere they maneuver, it magically reappears in front of them. And then it gets to the point where it's just matching their maneuvers and it's maneuvering with them. So the whole planet is being moved by Trelane, and they're not able to get away.
So Kirk is angry now, and he tells Scotty that, prepare, I am going down to the planet, and Spock, if you don't hear back from me within an hour, just go. Keep going.
Don't know how he's going to keep going if
Oh, yeah, if you stuck there.
If the planet keeps maneuvering in front of him, I really don't understand Kirk's plan. I understand his motivation. I understand what he's going to go do. But I don't understand how he thinks that if he fails, they're going to be able to get away. Maybe he has no concept that he's going to fail. He just doesn't want to clue Spock into his plan, which, as we learned very shortly, is to offer himself up as a sacrifice to Trelane. I will stay behind and face whatever consequences or anger that you have, but let the Enterprise go. So maybe that's it. Maybe Kirk just thinks he is going to succeed, because I guess there's no other alternative.
So then we are back on Gothos, and court is in session, literally. Everything is dark, and the way they have the direction of the camera, Trelane is on the super, super, super tall judge's bench, and Kirk is in this tiny, tiny little defendant's booth.
Yes, I really liked this choice in camera angles and how this scene is set up, because it puts us as the viewer in a position where it puts us as the viewer in Kirk's perspective, which is being manipulated by Trelane in this scene. It really projects this idea that Trelane is in fact controlling the scenario and controlling the situation and manipulating things to try to impress upon Kirk that Kirk is weak and Kirk is not in control, and all these camera angles put us as the viewer in that same position.
And remember that we're still in the Old English era, and Trelane is in the Old English, very English gray curly wig, and the cover that even the UK uses today. But with the curly wig and everything.
Yes. Burn a fun fact. When they went to shoot this scene, they could only find a wig that resembled the only description, I couldn't find a picture of it, but all the descriptions were of a French style, and the actor who plays Trelane very much objected to using that wig, saying, if we want to be authentic and we're going for this English setting and this English persona, he would know enough that the character would make sure that the wig was accurate, so we need to make sure the wig is accurate. Kirk hated that idea. Kirk didn't want to face the delay to go out and get this wig. But in the end, producers and the director sided with the actor who played Trelane, and there was a little bit of a delay as they went out and sourced this other wig. I think it was for the best.
Me too. And what ego on the actor who plays Kirk? What's his face?
What ego on William Shatner? William Shatner having an ego? Never.
Well, back then, I mean, now I know he just eats, breathes, and his ego, but that's okay.
Oh, he had an ego back then too. That's well documented.
Oh. So Trelane is so angry that he even shows how serious he is by showing Kirk that when he is deemed, guilty, there's a hangman's noose waiting for him. But it's only a shadow, so I'm presuming they can't show that on TV yet.
Oh, they show it at the end when.
Well, yes, but at the time.
No, it's just for dramatic effect.
Oh.
But there's an arguing back and forth in this mock trial setting. Kirk tries to defend himself, but Trelane is dead set, no pun intended, on finding Kirk guilty so that he can execute Kirk, because, again, Trelane is playing imagination and wants to control the outcome. In the end, Kirk uses that to his advantage and starts by playing along with the imagination game, ignoring the consequences of his impending death, and suggests that simply executing Kirk would be too easy. Even Trelane makes mention that it's too easy, that he's sad that it has to end, because he's feeling all these emotions and he's enjoying this playtime that he's set up. So Kirk instead suggests, why don't you make this more interesting? Let's turn this into conquest and combat. And if you really want to experience what it's like to be a human, which I think is what Trelane is ultimately trying to experience, then we have to make this about conquest and fighting. You can't just use your powers to get everything that you want. You have to have that struggle, which Trelane agrees to, but ultimately doesn't follow through with. Kirk also continues to push the idea that let the Enterprise go. You don't need them. I can provide all the experience that you need. It again doesn't really matter. It's kind of a side tangent that never develops anything. In the end, Trelane then decides to set up. I will hunt you. You will go hide. Put in your best effort to avoid me. And I will ultimately hunt you down and kill you. I get to control the rules. I get to control the outcome. And you just have to participate.
So Kirk finds himself plopped outside of that building where he was given the opportunity to contact Enterprise, but he still can't get through. And he's using up precious time because, well, he should be running and hiding. He's standing there talking. And then Trelane appears because he's like, you should have been hiding, because they're playing hide and go seek. And they're running through the woods. It's beautiful, but they're running. And Kirk is able to knock the sword out of Trelane's hand by swinging from the tree, like Tarzan.
Yeah.
And then is able to grab that same sword and attack Trelane, where Trelane just disappears.
Yes, because again, Trelane wants to control the outcome. Is not playing fair. Still.
But he does, say, all right, you won that one round, but I haven't played this game before, so let's do it again. And Kirk just tosses the sword in the bushes. He's done. Trelane laughs and even grabs another one for himself out of thin air and starts chasing Kirk, who then has to grab a tree branch and so he can fight against Trelane and protect himself. So finally, we're back at the front of that pretty area, and Kirk tries to contact the Enterprise again on the porch. He's still unable to, but Trelane boxes Kirk in on each open side with what looks like a cage, and he's laughing the entire time. Like, you're not getting away from me. Like, I've won. And he wants to bring the crew back from the Enterprise to play more. And Kirk won't submit to be defeated. He tries to attack Trelane again, where he ends up grabbing his sword and breaks it over his knee.
Right. Specifically, this is the pivoting moment where Trelane, I think, continues to expect Kirk to play along. He orders Kirk to kneel so that he can be executed. This is the moment where we really first see that transition. And we really I think it starts to set it up as Trelane being a child. Kirk is now standing up as the adult and saying, I'm not going to play anymore. Trelane still has the ability and the power to make Kirk do whatever he wants, but Trelane doesn't have the ability, the emotions, or the intelligence to realize this and focuses solely on the fact that Kirk is no longer playing make-believe with him according to his own rules.
And he broke his sword.
Exactly.
How rude. And as he's crying over this, again, more tantrums, we have a woman's voice come from behind somewhere, calling out his name, and two blobs are bobbing in the air, telling he's done playing.
Right. This is the reveal that Trelane is in fact a child of this alien species.
And he is begging for more time to study his predators, like they're his toys. And it's a male and a female voice now acting as parents. And this has gone too far. These beings they have spirit. They are superior than what you think. They're not animals. You're done. And, you did wrong. So let them go. Or if you don't do right, we're not going to let you make any more planets.
Right. This is the moment where your parents wandered out back thinking that you were just observing ants in an anthill and finds their child using a magnifying glass to burn the ants.
You would think these voices would be more mean and upset about that, but thankfully no one died. So instead he just has more tantrums, and I woulda won. I woulda, like pretend a child, woulda. The actor, this is the good part with the actor. So they call him back to wherever they are looming and tell Kirk that they're going to maintain this atmosphere and life support so that he can be able to go back to the ship, and they're sorry for Trelane's actions and saying that they didn't know how vulnerable Trelane, their child, made them as adult humans in his scenario. And then Kirk is able to connect to the Enterprise, and Spock beams him back up. And then we're back on the Enterprise as if like nothing happened. And we're approaching colony Beta 6, and we're clear to land. And Spock asks Kirk, how would you describe Trelane? Because he's doing his own report. Is he a super being, an intellectual, a god of war? I don't know if he's worthy of that title. And then Kirk goes on to explain, what about small boy? Naughty small boy? Something like that. And then he's like, come on, Spock, remember when you were a young boy doing mischievous things? And he lists things like dipping little girls' curls in ink. And Spock just looks at him like, what are you talking about? And so Kirk's like, oh, that's it. Yep. Return to your station, finish your report, and we'll continue on. And then it ends the episode with Spock going back to that station, and he raises his eyebrow as Kirk just remembers the fond memories of childhood.
And roll credits. So, Jackie, what did you think about Season 1, Episode 17, The Squire of Gothos?
It was very entertaining to watch, as you mentioned, but I do have my own reservations.
All right. And again, as my final thoughts, I still enjoyed the episode quite a bit. I enjoyed the character for Trelane, even removing the context of him being a member of the Q that we learn about later in Star Trek. It's just an entertaining episode to watch. We're going to try something new and end our thoughts to the episode with our favorite quote from the episode. Jackie, what would be your one favorite quote?
I wasn't able to speak it originally, but it actually is. I object to you. I object to intellect without discipline. I object to power without constructive purpose. And it's by Spock speaking to Trelane when Trelane told him that I didn't have to bring you, I only brought you as gift to Kirk. And I think Spock has an amazing ability to use words to explain his ideas and doesn't just drop down to a unclassy level.
All right. Kind of thought you'd pick that quote, so I would have picked that quote, but I picked another one just so we'd have different quotes. I anticipated your decision.
Well, you cheated.
No, I just have powers like Trelane. So my favorite quote is directly from Trelane. It is in one of the conversations and back and forth between him and Kirk, where Trelane simply says, "Dear Captain, so many questions. Make the most of an uncertain future. Enjoy yourself today. Tomorrow may never come at all." I don't have any particular in-context reason for liking it. I think that's just a fantastic out-of-context quote.
Like on a wall. We need a poster.
Yes, live, love, be Trelane. But I have a few Tribble tidbits or fun facts about the episode. And why do we call them Tribble tidbits, Jackie?
Because they're amazing.
I was actually going to dig out the tribbles for the episode that we have, but
They'll triple.
we'll dig out the tribbles for the next recording. First airing January 12th, 1967. Jackie, stop looking for the tribbles in the background as we're recording.
I found it.
It isn't until The Next Generation that we get a full reckoning of the Q continuum. As I mentioned several times, I just found it interesting that even though in roughly 2.5 seasons we will get the introduction of the Q continuum, it is not until the Strange New World episode, Wedding Bell Blues, which just aired pretty recently to the airing of this episode of the podcast, that we get the retcon that Trelane and his parents are both members of the Q continuum. So we go through all the rest of Star Trek before they decide to address it. The salt vampire scene in the castle we mentioned as kind of the Easter egg. We all know, of course, the real reason why they did this was no other reason than they're reusing props and recycling props to save money. We mentioned also that the other prop mannequin that was vaporized by the phaser was that bird creature. It is, in fact, the same bird creature that we briefly see all the way back in the first episode, The Cage, when they're in the zoo. Jackie is struggling to remember that creature.
Well, it says briefly.
It is very brief that we see it in the background. William Campbell is the actor who played Trelane.
Phenomenal.
Phenomenal. It is recorded that there is an embarrassing blooper when he's first introduced to Uhura, The line is he's supposed to refer to her as a Nubian prize, which is the shot that we get. But as a blooper, one of the takes he accidentally refers and uses the line and refers to her as a Nubian slave.
Uh-oh.
The actress who plays Uhura, of course, reacted viscerally by threatening to kick him in the ankle and was angered by the blooper. It's unrecorded. There's no official source that I could find, but I did find evidence and references that the reaction to that was the actor William Campbell apologized for the slip, and everything was very quickly glossed over. There was no lasting impact to the blooper. Obviously, he wasn't intending to offend. That same actor, William Campbell, will later go on to have a part in the episode The Trouble with Tribbles.
Yay!
We won't reveal what part to avoid spoilers, but we will see the actor again.
He's going to play with them.
And finally, in that very prolonged fight chase scene at the end in the forest, when Trelane is chasing Kirk, the actor who plays Trelane, William Campbell, does fall in one of the takes and dislocates his shoulder. He popped back up from the fall and threw his arms up and re-popped his shoulder back into place. But if you watch back some of those scenes, you'll see that his right arm is hanging limply at his side. That's him favoring the injury and trying not to injure his arm further. But those are your Tribble tidbits.
It's a good guy all around, except for the mess up.
This is where we rank our episode, and we pretend the episode is a member of our crew, and we give it a Starfleet rank. We assign a rank not only based on how entertained we were by watching the episode this time, but also how important of a crew member we think the episode would be on the ship, how much it would carry the ship, how much duty it would carry. A higher rank episode means, of course, as a captain or a commander or a lieutenant commander, it carries more weight. And as a lower rank to the episode, a lieutenant junior grade or even an ensign, it's not that important of an episode. It wasn't that entertaining, and it could easily die off in the future, and we wouldn't even notice the crew member was gone. As a reference to last week's episode, Jaci gave the Galileo 7 a rank of commander, which would roughly give it an 8 or 9 out of 10. And that completely filled up her commander rank. We only allow 5 ranks of commander on our starship. And if none of this makes sense, remember that we give a visual representation of our rankings, updated every Wednesday, the day after the episode airs, over on our Patreon at patreon.com/treksandtangents. Go over and check it out and see where the rankings currently stand. Jackie, for your starship, the USS Galactic Glitterbee, what rank do you give today's episode?
The only way it gets saved from being an ensign is because it was entertaining, so I'm giving it lieutenant junior grade. So while I think that Trelane's character kept it higher, it's hard for me to get over the icky parts, like talking about Yeoman Ross and her dress and the ball, and then we have Uhura. Like, literally, she's not wearing much of anything really in all of this, and she's just like a thing. I mean, I know that's just 2 characters, but then he even goes on to Spock, more of a item. I don't know. These are all like actual people, beings.
All right. Well, my rankings are a little top heavy, as we've mentioned in past episodes. I generally tend to rank episodes higher than Jackie. So for the USS Cosmic Shark, we're going to shake things up a little bit. We're going to give a demotion for Dagger of the Mind. We're going to move that out of the commander spot, which is going to put the Squire of Gothos into our commander spot. We're going to demote Dagger of the Mind all the way down to Lieutenant and really free up some space at the top of the command chain. I again found this episode really entertaining. I always enjoy episodes that not just revolve around characters of the queue, but there are several characters that we'll encounter that have these types of powers, these fantastical abilities, and the character has this mindset of superiority and ego. I tend to find those plots and those episodes to be pretty entertaining. So
Because you already know what happens.
Because I know far more than you do when it comes to Star Trek, as we've established. So that's going to do that for my ranking. We're going to bump Dagger of the Mind down to Lieutenant. We're going to put the Squire of Gothos in as Commander. For reference on IMDb, as of this recording, this episode holds a rank of 7.2 out of 10. Again, as a reminder, you can find a visual representation of our rankings over on our Patreon at patreon.com/treksandtangents. We'll post this update the Wednesday, the day after this episode goes live. And we'll go out on this episode by giving our turbolift tease or elevator pitch to next week's episode. This is where I'll give Jaci the name of next week's episode, and Jaci, without any other information, will try to guess the plot to that episode. Jaci, next week's episode is entitled Arena.
For Arena, I think Kirk will meet someone that he has to have a bet with. And if he doesn't win this bet, someone else that he has to choose from his crew has to be a stand-in for him and do an event.
And tune in next week to see how accurate Jaci's prediction is. Wrapping up this week, if you want more show information, you can find and directly support our podcast on Patreon at patreon.com/treksandtangents. We post again for everyone to view our graphical update rankings to the episode. For our crew members who support us over on Patreon, we also have a monthly bonus episode called Animated Detours, where we dive into the animated series of Star Trek. It's a lot more goofy. It's a lot more tangents compared to these episodes.
A lot more fun.
A lot more fun. So hopefully you plan to check that out. We also post on there currently and host all of the test episodes that we recorded to
And messed up on
to prepare for our podcast. There's about 15 or 16 of them over there. Still fully fledged podcast episodes on Fringe and SG1, just not quite as structured, not quite as polished as these episodes. Not that I would call these episodes polished in any way. You can also follow us on x.com at treks_tangents. We're also on Instagram and Blue Sky at Treks and Tangents. Jaci, where can people find you and what are you up to?
I am mainly floating around on Instagram as Jaboom, JIBBOOM. I should make a song where I talk about everyday living with a disability. I have CRPS along with other things, training a service dog, fashion while in a weight loss journey, while being mid-sized and proud of it, my music, as well as also having a shop on Whatnot called Glitter Bow Boutique, where my treasures can be your treasures because I don't want to just throw them out. So I will see you there.
And you can watch me stream a variety of video games over at twitch.tv/PiratePoundtown. No set schedule, just follow over there and you'll get notifications when I go live. It's usually in the evenings, sometimes on the weekends. You can also on YouTube see me post a variety of video game content over on my main channel at Pirate Pound Town. Also on YouTube under Pirate Treasure Hunting, I post coin collecting videos and other random hobby content. I post socially on Blue Sky at Pirate Pound Town, and I can also be found on Instagram under Pineapple Cannibal because I'm proudly banned from Instagram as Pirate. Links to all social media mentioned can be found in the episode description. Thank you everyone for tuning into this episode. We hope you had fun like we did, and we will see you all next week.
The ball is never over. Keep your glass slippers on.
End transmission.